Welcome, everyone, to a very special edition of Bengals on the Brain live from the First Star Studios. It's a gloomy Tuesday afternoon in Cincinnati, which is very fitting for how the game went yesterday. We'll spend a little bit of time here recapping that and setting the stage for today's show. And we will take your questions, leave them in the chat. We will get to them. My producer back there, Dave Burke, will read them off to me, and we'll get to your burning questions. I know you got a lot of them. There's a lot of discussion on Twitter already this morning, and we have a couple bobbleheads. We'll give away a Dave Lapham and a Joe Goodberry set to 3 people using the hashtag Bengals on the Brain in the chat. Yeah, we're making you work for it. You need to spell it out completely. Don't spell Bengals on the Brian. That won't get you included. So Bengals on the Brain. The Bengals lose last night to drop to 0-3 on Monday Night Football on national television in kind of an embarrassing fashion on defense, especially. We'll talk about the offense and the defense, but I think when you don't force a team to punt all night long, the Commanders essentially have 6 possessions, not including the kneel down, and they score on every single possession, 2 weeks in a row for them. So to give Washington Commanders some credit there, really fight back against Cam Taylor-Britt's comments of this is a college offense. Well, this college offense hasn't punted in 2 games now, and did what they wanted to with the Bengals defense. And whether it was the run, whether it was the quarterback, whether it was pass protection, whether it was, a rookie QB in his third start completing 90% of his passes is unheard of. Explosive plays downfield, forcing missed tackles, forcing bad run fits. It was all bad for the defense. And then on the offensive side, the Bengals didn't punt themselves. And it's funny, it's the 3rd time that they've done this under the Joe Burrow era. And they're 1-2 in those games. If you remember some of the other ones where they dropped, 600 yards on the Ravens backups, that was a fun time. Burrow, broke a lot of records in that one. That was their one win. The other loss was the Baker Mayfield game where in 2020, where the offense looked great and the defense could not get a stop to save their life. Very similar to this one. And I think about that Baker Mayfield game. I think about the Mike White game. And why does this defense and the Lou Anarumo-led Bengals have these games where these unknown quarterbacks or young quarterbacks, we know what Jaden Daniels is, but have them have such performances and historical performances that just leave you wondering, are they even game planning? What is happening and the week preceding to these games and these performances? So, that's more of, I think, a game recap. But at the same time, I think people have questions about what is going on in this organization. There were so many national reporters and talk, throughout the offseason of, the vibes aren't right. Things aren't what they need to be in Cincinnati. We have players asking for trades, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. You got contract issues with Jamar Chase. Questions about Joe Burrow's health. Those have seemed to have faded. He seems to be playing very well now as the offense really looked to be rounding into form last night and the running game exploding and different packages and different motions and all the things we want to see. Maybe some red zone issues can be cleaned up and that would take the offense to the next level. But at that point, you're asking the offense to be perfect. But organizationally, I made a comment on Twitter just a little bit ago that I think when you have the defense playing the way it is, right? And what is defense, especially in football and then all the way up to the NFL level? You're asking your guys to run headfirst, 100 miles an hour into a brick wall. And you're expecting your brother next to you, all 11 guys, to do the same with you. And you run in there and you don't ask questions and you hit the hole, you hit your hole, you hit your gap, and you play defense as hard as possible. And we're not seeing that. And I think it stems from the vibes not being right all offseason, as some have said, where you're not paying your top players. You're not committing to your top players, whether that's Jesse Bates, whether that's T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson not getting guaranteed money in the future years. And he's been an absolute stud and really the only savior on the defensive side. Doing the same and not committing to Jamar Chase long-term and giving him the financial security and stability you want. And someone even brought up on Twitter, like Larry Ogunjobi didn't get that, right? And they haven't essentially replaced him over the last 3 years. DJ Reader, clearly. And when you don't do this and you don't commit to these guys long-term, how can these guys be asked to run headfirst into a brick wall and trust that they're going to be taken care of when they don't feel like the organization is going to take care of them either? So is it a top-down systemic thing where you have fractured the mentality it's required to have to play defense at a level that I'm frankly not sure they can play at because they don't have the talent, number one. So if you have a talent on a deficiency on defense because you haven't drafted well enough, you need to play hard smart, physical defense, and they're not that right now at all, and they haven't been. And other than the Chiefs game, for some reason, they can show up and play against the Chiefs. They can have a great game playing against the Chiefs and quarterback-centric offenses. But when it comes to any team that's going to get under center and do play action and move the pocket and stick with the run game and force them to do anything other than drop back and cover, they seem to lose their minds on defense. And I think it may be a systemic thing because I'm not sure the talent is there and help is there. Is that Miles Murphy? Is it Chris Jenkins? Is it McKinley Jackson? Is that all our hopes are pinned on? That doesn't sound very promising. I see the chat is going. Dave, I'm sure we've got some questions here, and I think I've rambled. I could probably do that for 30 straight minutes, but let's not do that. Let's hear from the people.
Well, first off, let's talk about your time in Cincinnati. You're back. We always like having you back here at First Star
That's
Logistics
right.
in the studios. So you had a chance to go to the game last night, get in the suite. I mean, you must have had an awesome time. Got Gary Owen up there.
That's right. First Star always takes care of me. I wish the Bengals took care of Joe Burrow as well as First Star takes care of me, to be honest with you. You know, they fly me in, put me up, bring me into the First Star suite at Paycor, and it's awesome. And it's a good time every time. The only bad product was the defense on the field last night. Everything else was awesome, and the studio was great. And, I wish I had more positive. First Star is 100% all the way, but, the team, the game overshadows a little bit of that. But, yeah, they take care of me well.
This kind of goes what you're talking about. We're going to Andrew's question here. How much of a difference would DJ Reader have made this year, assuming health?
Right, assuming health, and we know that he missed the first week with the Lions, has played the last 2 weeks. He has played well. It looks like he's, doing what he does, nose tackle, run defense is his specialty. Would he have mattered? Of course he would have. He's a good player. The hard part I have two brains on this, two Bengals brains on this. Number one, it's hard to commit to a guy who has had routine injuries since the Bengals have signed him. It's a guy who's played less than 50% of the total defensive snaps since when the Bengals signed him to when, he left last year and got hurt last year. And okay, how can we commit to a guy that's 30, has had health injuries, and only plays the nose tackle spot, which means you're not playing 100% of the snaps anyway. So having said that, DJ Reader is a freaking good player and a really good player and one of the leaders of this team and one of the guys that would have taken offense to the team not being physical enough, would have taken offense to people calling out the defense and saying, you guys aren't tough, you guys aren't good, you guys are not up to par. He would have been one of the leaders to get them rallied together and getting them back in order. And it seems like they're definitely missing that. So number one on the field, they're clearly missing a nose tackle that can eat up space and create one-on-one opportunities across the defensive line. And number two, I think they're missing that leadership. So again, is it worth paying that guy for that and taking the risk? Once in a while, you're going to have to take some risk. That's a cost of doing business. That's the cost of running an NFL team, is taking some risk with these contracts for players that have given you everything that you've asked them to give you. And I think Reader falls into that category, maybe less than Jesse Bates and some of these others, but I definitely think that's a fair point and a person to bring up.
Ant says Zach Taylor's now 1-9 the first 2 games and 3-11-1 the first 3 games of the season. Is it time for him to go? Was he qualified for the position to begin with?
That's a lot there. Number one, was he qualified? No, he wasn't. You got to remember, the Bengals, when they were hiring, they weren't bringing in a bunch of experienced coaches. And I'm not even sure that you're supposed to. You're supposed to kind of roll the dice on a young guy and hopefully strike gold and get the right lottery ticket. I think that is usually the best way to handle it. Even Bill Belichick didn't get hired this offseason. Mike Vrabel as well, right? These experienced guys, typically, you want to start fresh and get the next Mike Vrabel, get the next Kevin O'Connell or whoever it may be that's coaching really well. And so I don't know that that's a bad thing that he wasn't qualified. And I think the Bengals saw that we have a probably 2-year rebuild here, and we think Zach Taylor is going to be that guy by the time we need him to be. And they were correct. I mean, they got within maybe one left guard pass protection play of winning a Super Bowl. So it's kind of hard to say he's not good enough to get them there and get them to win it. But is the team good enough around it now? Is the situation correct? Now that you've paid the quarterback, can they keep it? Can they sustain it? Is something wrong with the offseason plan and the preseason plan in order to get them ready for week 1? I think that clearly is an issue. You can't continue to start off as bad as they have. And I think we've always maybe glossed over it because Burrow has dealt with injuries. There was a COVID year to start, and then the knee, and then the appendectomy, the calf. There was always something that said, well, they're starting slow because your quarterback's not healthy. And clearly the quarterback drives the NFL and drives individual games and performances. So we always kind of brush that off. But then you see it this year, and Burrow is actually playing well and playing well enough. There has been times where, he could have, at the end of the Chiefs game, could have had a drive to win that one. And that at any point in the New England game could have taken over and maybe performed better, especially at the end. But again, Zach Taylor, keeping the focus on Taylor, getting your guys ready, not just Burrow, getting the entire team ready and getting them ready for week one is important. And if you ever want that number one seed and want to stop going to KC in the playoffs, you're going to have to win these first few games of the season. Now, people are going to call for Zach Taylor's head. I think after a game where the offense was nearly perfect is probably not the game it's going to happen. But if we're talking culture, if that's one of Zach Taylor's strengths, and it was for the 2021 team, you have to question what's going on. And I think they need a new direction, and it could come from Zach. It could come from Burrow. Burrow's even talked about it in his post-game press conference yesterday, said, I need to figure out what type of leader I need to be for this team, because that changes based on who you have. But I also wonder, organizationally, if they can handle building a team after paying the quarterback. And this is probably a question that's probably people are thinking as well, because I think of the Carson Palmer years, and they pay him, and then 06, 07, 08, and it's like, yeah, they just don't have the team around Palmer anymore. And then I think of when they paid Andy Dalton. They paid Andy Dalton, AJ Green, Clint Bowling. That was the 2011 class. By the time they paid all three of them, they would never make the playoffs again with that trio. And so they've struggled to get to this point where we're at right now and continue the success, continue to draft well at the end of the round, continue to draft well and bring in value free agents, the correct ones to fit around these high priced players and quarterback that you're paying. We have yet to see them succeed as an organization in this situation. And here we are again in this situation, and they're 0-3 and staring at a potentially 30% chance to make the playoffs, and historically uphill climb to make the playoffs.
What do you think Joe and Zach talked about when they went to the coaching office directly after the game?
I do not know. I would love to know what that was about. I can speculate. And I thought it was funny a few times as I'm up in the first star suite looking down. You get a real good perspective of some of the players coming off the field and who they talk to and what they could potentially be saying, their body language when the camera isn't on them. There was a few times Trey Hendrickson is coming off the field, and he's just slowly walking off, head down. He's getting his butt kicked out there, and he's being replaced by Cedric Johnson or by Joseph Osai, two guys who have been largely ineffective so far through 3 games. And I see Hendrickson talking to Taylor as he comes aside. You would think he'd go to Lou Anarumo or the defensive line coach, but he stops to talk to Taylor, and he's pointing out in the field, and he looks frustrated. And I wouldn't be surprised if players are feeling that throughout the team. And clearly it looked like Burrow did. There was a great picture of them walking off the field and both of them looking at each other like, and they've got to be thinking similar things like accountability and getting these players on the same page and getting a consistent game plan week to week. I mean, the offense has done its job since week one. Week one, they were definitely flat. Week 2 and week 3, you did enough to get it done. Other than the fumble return for a touchdown, you probably win that game without that singular play. And they cleaned it up for week 3. This has happened every year under Taylor and this offense. They've gotten better as it's gone on. But it can't just be you anymore, right? If it's Taylor and Burrow and you guys can control the offense as best as you can, well, you're starting to look on the other side of the field and say the defense is not doing what they need to do. Special teams is having timely mistakes now with Evan McPherson missing an extra point last week, missing a 3-pointer this week, which may have changed the game had he had made that one early. And then Lou Anarumo and the defense not being able to be consistent in their week-to-week game planning and how they prepare and attack and the effort and the consistency with those guys. I think he probably went in there to vent a little bit, blow off some steam a little bit, but also I wouldn't be surprised if they were on the exact same page. A lot of people took that as Burrow's going in there to hold Zach Taylor accountable. Listen, Zach Taylor's still the head coach. I wouldn't be surprised if he went in there and they were in sync and had the same mindset of we may need to do something differently to right this ship, and it starts today.
Evan says, how do you think Mims played? I felt fine about him, but others seem to think he performed poorly.
Yeah, I'm going to do a cut-up of every snap Mims had. He had 39. A couple of them were jumbo before Trent Brown went down, and we'll see how he looked specifically in a full set. There was a couple plays where I thought, okay, was he unsure of what was happening? Was he unsure of what Alex Kappa was doing? Was it a twist that didn't get passed off correctly? But largely, I thought he looked very patient, very balanced. Like instantly, I noticed we had a more athletic right tackle in there. Trent Brown clearly is not the most athletic guy, especially as he, didn't really have a hot start to the season. Let's be fair. But as soon as Mims was inserted, I'm seeing that right tackle kick out of there much quicker, much more balanced, patient. He's waiting for these rushers at the top of the arc and just absorbing them. He looks like a veteran when it comes to that. I thought he was very good at that. Uh, he got beat inside twice when he did, and that may always be the case with him. And I wasn't sure if he was just in sync with what the offense was doing. It looked like it was his first start, and he wasn't expected to be out there, of course. Trent Brown was going to start. He was only going to be out there for jumbo packages. And I think Kappa has been up and down. That doesn't help either. But in the run game, I thought he had a couple really nice blocks, a couple that he fell off his guy a little bit too soon, or the timing wasn't perfect when he's got to, double team with Kappa and then get to the second level, or help out his tight end and then get to the second level. So these are all things that'll get ironed out. First game, I have no problem with the way Amarius Mims played, but we'll have a full video of that. Check for that on Twitter at Joe Goodberry.
All right. Lyle says you let Reeder and Bates walk and still don't sign Higgins or Chase as of yet. How big of a failure is this by the front office? But hold on, Joe.
Okay.
He also says, and the front office letting the Bengals come into this year with the defensive line should be considered malpractice.
Yeah, that's completely fair. When you don't pay those guys, and I started the show with that, I think it has an effect on the mentality of the entire team. Any job you work at, right? Take your own personal job. If you don't feel like the company is taking care of you, or the managers really care about you, how does that affect the morale and how everyone starts working? Clearly, it starts to dip. They don't have that problem here at First Star Logistics, where they take care of their guys, and it's a great place to be. But the Bengals seem to be having that issue. And when you say, all right, we're going to let these guys go, trust us, right? That's what the Bengals basically did. We're going to let these guys walk, but don't worry. We know what we're doing. We're going to draft Dax Hill in the first round to replace Jesse Bates. We're going to draft Jordan Battle to replace Von Bell, basically, essentially, right? You spent a third round pick on a safety. That's a premium pick. That guy's got to be able to start. And then you say on the defensive line, go back all the way to Tyler Shelvin, Joseph Osai, and then recently Zach Carter. And then Cam Sample went down. He was a quality player. Miles Murphy went down, quality player. We have to see how Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson develop. But they've said, trust us, we're going to draft these replacements for these good veteran players. For Larry Ogunjobi, here's Zach Carter. For DJ Reeder, here's McKinley Jackson. Well, number one, why that's a bad plan is because you're not going to hit 100% on your draft picks. That's not a reasonable expectation. If you're hitting 30%, you're doing a good job. So you still need to replace these guys with quality veterans. And that's how you get a Geno Stone being replaced a year after Jesse Bates. And so you're always chasing your tail a little bit on that, and still not spending what you did previously on a guy like Jesse Bates, or would have. So the defensive line, though, when you say, all right, it's basically, we know going into the year, we know it's Trey Hendrickson and then everyone else. We're hoping Sam Hubbard can return to be what he's always been, was a quality player. He's never a difference maker. He's never an impact player. He's had some impact plays and some big plays in his career, and we'll remember him fondly, but clearly it looks like he's not, and may never be, what he was when he was younger. And then at the defensive tackle room, BJ Hill has been a fine player. Sheldon Rankins has been an inconsistent quality pass rusher, guy who's dealt with injuries throughout his career. And here he is again. I would say that's what he's been through 3 weeks. He's been exactly what he's been, but you're paying a premium because you have to dip into free agency for it, because you failed to draft well at that position. And then for the last few years, we've known Zach Carter has been one of the worst defensive tackles in the league. And now you're in a position where he has to play, and he has to play the most of all the defensive tackles in that room. That is not a winning formula to just say, hey, Hendrickson, save us. Please save us, Trey Hendrickson, on every third down. You can't do that. Is it malpractice? Yeah, it is. You're airing your defense out. And I wouldn't be surprised if the entire team knows it. Like, man, we're starting these guys. You ever been a part of a team and you know when a bad player is playing and starting? Everyone knows.
Blake says, is there anything that you can hang your hat on in regards to us turning the season around? Feels like we almost have to win 6 or 7 straight.
Yeah, they're going to have to make a run at some point, whether that's like the 2022 season where they win 10 in a row, but it's going to have to happen, and it's going to have to happen quickly. It starts this week. Like, they can't go 0-4. That happens. We can pretty much hang it up and turn our complete evaluation glasses on and just look at this team from a different perspective for the rest of the year. But if they win this game, if they can rattle off a few, they'd have the Ravens right after, Giants after that. It's not too tough. You can get close to back on track, but yeah, they're going to have to win a majority of their games. Maybe go 10-3. So we're talking a multiple runs here, whether that's a 3-game run, a 5-game run, whatever it is. They're going to have a couple of them in order to get 10 more wins on this season to at least be fighting for a wild card spot, unless the division absolutely tanks and implodes, which we've called this division the best division in football for how long. So I don't expect that to happen. Yeah, they're going to have to go on. What's the thing to hang your head on is that the offense has found its footing. If you look at EPAs, so expected points average or anything like that, any advanced analytics, the Bengals are now top 5 on offense. And that's with the week 1 game where they probably just shot themselves in the foot a little too many times, especially at the 1-yard line with the Tanner Hudson fumble and, a couple other plays. But any advanced analytic will show you that the Bengals offense is right knocking on the door of being elite. Their run game looks better than it has in a long time. Like last night's run game, to put in perspective of performance, PFF gave the running backs and run game in general an 84.5 grade. They've only been beaten by that one other time, and that was the Joe Mixon versus the Panthers 5-touchdown game, which was a tremendous, ground performance. And then one other time in the Burrow era was a Week 17 game, and I think it was even Burrow was out, because it was 2020 against the Ravens where they ran the ball and was very efficient there. So if you can get the run game going like that, we've said this for how many years now, you'll get a safety to come down in the box and you can throw it over their heads. And the Bengals did that twice, and Jamar Chase looked good and he scored. And, the gritty was back and all of these things on offense that we're looking for. And the O-line is actually blocking. If there's a frustration, the O-line is finally good. And we don't have the other parts around Joe Burrow to make it useful. You're behind in the count, so they're still teeing off on you as pass rushing on the defensive line against a much improved O-line. And that's even with Amarius Mims getting inserted because Brown went down. But that's why you draft Mims, and that's why you have the depth you do. So what do you hang your hat on? Maybe that's a shootout type season. Maybe this is, like the 2005 Bengals where the defense is just going to have to create some turnovers and the offense is going to have to win 31-28. And if that's the case, at least it'll be exciting and fun to watch. But yeah, it'll be probably nerve-wracking for the rest of the year.
I don't know about you, Joe. Fourth quarter, I kept waiting for that turnover.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for I was like, okay, Daniels is going to make a mistake. Bengals are going to get a turnover. And that's going to be the deciding factor. The Bengals will win the game.
And I thought it was coming as well. So what did the 2021 and 22 defenses do, right? There was times, we're not talking about, so a Lou Anarumo thing, they've barely been a top 20 defense in his tenure here. It's not like they've been a great defense. They've been a very timely defense. They've been very good, bend but don't break. Get them into the red zone and then make a play. Get a stop. Hold them to field goals. Have that timely forced fumble or interception. And Jermaine Pratt almost knocked one out yesterday. He did knock it out and almost recovered it. And I thought, there it is. And then they, the Commanders got it back. And it was like, so deflating at that point. They had many deflating points. 3 for 3 on 4th downs for the Commanders last night. That kick return to start the second half. There was a 2nd and 21 after a penalty from the Commanders where I'm like, okay, here's your chance to actually pass rush and get to them and make a play and make a stop. And they still are able to convert. It was not good last night. And, that team would typically make plays in those situations, and they just couldn't rise to it this time.
Yeah, you kept waiting for that rookie mistake by Daniels, and it just never came.
Never did. He played great.
Okay, we said this was a vent session with Joe Goodberry. Bleak question, but do we need to wait until Mike Brown is no longer in the picture and hope the next generation cares more about winning than cash?
This is a question that you do get often because we've seen the transition from Mike Brown to the Blackburns, right? And it's been a slow burn over the last 5 to 10 years. And the one thing that I do caution whenever this is brought up is that, Katie Blackburn has handled the contracts for a long time. When we say, oh, Mike Brown doesn't want to spend the money or Mike Brown doesn't want to do guaranteed contracts, whatever it is, this organization is run by more people than Brown at this point. And this isn't to absolve him of any of it because it's probably they're following what he's, the plan he's set for 30 years now plus. But at the same time, if Katie Blackburn isn't willing to change on those contracts and those negotiations, is that going to change when Mike Brown isn't with the organization anymore? I find it hard to believe that all of a sudden they start spending more money. I think it might just be a family and an organizational limitation, a self-imposed limitation that they don't want to do contracts this way. This is a team, an organization that votes against the 2011 CBA when we started to see the guaranteed contracts start rising. This is a team that's going to be like, yeah, we told you so, that it's not a good idea. Or they're going to be stubborn enough to say, hey, we're not going to do what everyone else is doing because we voted against it, because we fundamentally don't believe in doing these things. But is it going to limit them? Is it going to hurt them? Of course, we've seen it countless times at this point.
Sam's got the question: would trading Higgins for D-line help be worthwhile, especially considering dropping Higgins could allow for a Gesicki extension?
Interesting. So that'll probably be a discussion we have closer to the trade deadline and see how the season goes. If they, what is week 10? I think the trade deadline now. If they're at that point, 5-5, let's say, and climbing or looking better, and then you'd have to go 5-2 over that span. So I think we probably feel better about the organization and the team at that point. You'd probably be a tight split on should you trade T. Higgins or not. Now, if they don't get it in line, if they can't recover, if at that point they're instead 3-7, yeah, I would say this is the time to take what you can get for Higgins. And even if that's a draft pick or a defensive line prospect, I mean, I don't think you're going to get fair value there for a player to player, especially because T would only have a 7-game rental to offer the next team before you'd have to extend him again. And the team would also have to have that cap space because he's on the tag. So you're looking at very limited options and places where you could send him. So I would take the pick. But yes, that would be a different conversation. And we may get there. We may or may not. They may recover and rebound. But if we're there leading up to the trade deadline, we will talk about that a ton. Which players can you get something for on this roster? And T. Higgins is probably the main guy.
Ninja Smoke Bomb says national media, Colin Cowherd, talking about this right now. It's a systematic ownership being cheap issue. They spent some money at times, but way too many examples of penny pinching. 9 can't do it all.
And, on one hand, it is fair. I've done it today on this show and said that they have organizational issues, spending habit issues that affect the team and affect the players and affect the locker room. They do. And they also have money managing issues as well. We talked about this in the offseason, how they could have easily converted Orlando Brown's bonus and created, I think it was another $2.5 or $3.5 million in cap space that every team would have likely done. It was free money, basically. And they didn't do it. So, there are ways they can extend players like Trey Hendrickson and lower the cap hit. You can extend Jamar Chase and have lower cap hits in future years. They should have extended T. Higgins and had a lower cap hit this year rather than $22 million. Other organizations that were trying to compete and pack the roster in a young Super Bowl window would have done things differently. So it's fair. I don't always like the cheap thing or that they're poor, the poverty franchise thing, because there's more detail to it. There's more nuance to it. I think they can spend more money. I think they can offer more guaranteed money. I think they choose not to, which is maybe worse and maybe more deflating. But also, I think there's some managing things, cap accounting things that they can do that other organizations would do that the Bengals don't do. And I find that along the lines of being similar to being fundamentally not guaranteeing these contracts. I believe that's part of the risk of running a team and trying to win a championship. But at the same time, I don't think it's so much poverty franchise as it is stubbornness and unwillingness to adapt and take advantage of the situation that's in front of you. And as I'm saying it, that is more deflating.
Let me ask you this, Joe. Who has more issues, Cincinnati or Jacksonville?
Oh, good question. Good question. I think it could be Jacksonville. I don't think they've had a concrete plan. And, while I say that, I'm thinking that the Bengals really had one. It seems like they've laid one out and tried to enact it, and it hasn't worked. Is that worse than not having a plan and throwing random darts at free agents and draft picks that don't seem like they immediately fit together in Jacksonville, and trying to bring in all these old veteran coaches that have had success like Doug Peterson? That's an example for the question from earlier is, was Zach Taylor qualified, or would you rather go with a Doug Peterson that has had some success, but teams have already figured him out, right? Do you want the retread? Typically you don't. And the Jags did that, and they did that with some of their coordinators and other free agents that they brought in, and how they drafted, I thought was weird over the last couple of years. So what I want, and the Bengals have to. So I'm not saying the Bengals are better than the Jags. Are both 0-3 with franchise quarterbacks. Bengals are at least had their franchise quarterback playing well. there's times where Lawrence looks broken. And there was a few plays last night as we had the game on. We had the Bills-Jags game in the back of the First Star Suite, and I would turn and watch and see what was going on in between plays. And there were plays where I'm like, man, Trevor Lawrence, this is not good. This is, if you're a Jags fan, you're probably feeling a little bit worse than we are. But maybe the upside is, maybe the worst situation is that the Bengals may and probably will not and won't make organizational changes. And the Jags probably will fire everyone and get a new GM and get a new head coach and try and salvage this thing. Where the Bengals, what will it take to actually lose Zach Taylor or Duke Tobin and try and do something different? Maybe the quarterback melting down and asking for a trade like Carson Palmer, maybe embarrassing yourself on national television, a playoff game versus a division rival like the Vontaze Perfect Pac-Man Jones game. Maybe that would do it. No, they kept Marvin Lewis all through those things. So I don't know if help is on the way from the top down.
This leads right into what you were just talking about. Will the Bengals ever move on from Duke and upgrade the front office and scouting department?
So they have made upgrades to the front office and scouting department. Have they been fast enough? Have they been deep enough? Have they done enough? Clearly not. I still think they have top-down issues with drafting and scouting. I mean, I've had conversations with people in the organization where I'm talking about a certain data point that has been very predictive for certain positions, and they are completely unaware of it, or they don't use it. And it's like, well, the things like this can help you. The analytics department consists of one guy, and you would think you'd expand on that a little bit more and help you while every other team are using these data points and using the help. Why wouldn't you want more information and more help if it's beneficial to your team? They say they like a small room of people that know what they're talking about instead of having outside voices. But sometimes you create that bubble and you don't want to hear anything from the outside. And you've bounced that idea around in your bubble so much that you actually tend to believe it by the time the draft comes. And that's how you draft a Billy Price instead of pivoting to the other guy, the more athletic guy, or whatever the case may be, because you've gotten yourself to believe the things you guys have in your bubble. That's how it works. But will we ever expect them to do it? I don't know. Duke Tobin's been there so long. You have to think about what is set up. He's still technically not the GM, right? That's still labeled as Mike Brown. Everyone within the NFL knows that it's Duke Tobin and refers to him as the lead man. When they need something done, they call Duke. If they need a trade, if they're asking about a player, they call Duke. But let's say they fired him, would they offer that to somebody outside of the organization? I'm not convinced they would. This is a team that's still, the GM title is still the owner. That we know they won't give out the guaranteed contracts it's required to sign star players and get these guys in free agency and extend these guys. They have the smallest scouting department in the league. They're not very analytics driven. So if you're being interviewed, is that the job you want? I don't think it is. I think it would probably promote from within, which keeps them doing more of the same.
We were talking about this earlier before we went on air, because we were watching some of the replay from last night. Our D line has been decimated this year. Secondary needs to be our strength right now. Also, how have we using Akeem Davis-Gaither? That's the player we were talking about. I've seen him on the field a lot.
Yeah, so Akeem Davis-Gaither, we saw this starting in, I'll start with that question of it because I think it leads to the rest. We saw this in camp. It looked like they were doing a 3-3-5 package, which is 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, then 5 DBs. Akeem Davis-Gaither being that other linebacker, the third guy. Naturally, of course, he is. But then we also saw some packages where Jermaine Pratt was taken off the field and Akeem Davis-Gaither was inserted as more of a nickel and coverage linebacker. And I think he's definitely, you can see Pratt doesn't look as athletic and quick as he used to be. He's still a good downhill run defender and strong tackler. But I think if you need someone to cover in space, if you need someone to move sideline to sideline, it's got to be ADG. And maybe we start to see him mixed in even more at this point because he brings at least a spark to that defense. And that's been a reoccurring question on Twitter and in here. What can they do? Which players can they bring in or that are already on the depth chart to create that spark and get the energy level back to where it needs to be? And I think ADG is one of them. And then the secondary, you're right. It should be the strength of the team. Not only have they invested so many draft picks on that side, whether it's Dax Hill, Jordan Battle, DJ Turner, all the way down to Dejon Anthony and Josh Newton, but then free agency, bringing in Geno Stone and bringing back Von Bell, telling us that would be the fix for the communication and the safety issues. And they've corrected the explosive plays. I think they're 4th best on defense right now for allowing explosive plays, but they gotten worse at everything else. Speed is still a thing you need at the safety position. The ability to cover is still something you need at that position. Can we see Jordan Battle? Not sure he solves either of those things, but maybe it's the youthfulness, the energy, the run defense that he was really good at last year. Maybe that inserting him back into the lineup or finding a way to get him mixed in. He's got like 2 snaps on defense this year total, like inexcusable for a young draft pick. And you don't have a plan to get him on the field. It seems like even Dejon Anthony has more of a role, a small role, but even more of a role than Battle does. And then the corner room, which should be a strength because you've invested so much. Cam Taylor-Britt needs to play better. He needs to be better against the run. This is 2 years in a row now. He seems to be hit or miss against the run, and or even making business decisions at times, which maybe go into the whole conversation we've had today about the atmosphere within the team, and then getting beat deep multiple times this year. Dax Hill has had his bouts, and again, he's a safety move to corner. He's had his moments where I'm like, this tackling should be your strength. It's a little bit different of a position when you're on the boundary rather than inside the box. So he's still probably figuring that out. But then he gets beat for the last touchdown, which, double move, cover zero, all out blitz, and he just doesn't have the ball skills. He's probably never been in that situation enough to turn his back and look up and look for the ball, and make a play on the ball. It just is what it is. But you're starting that guy instead of DJ Turner, right? How far has DJ Turner fallen off? I thought we'd see more DJ Turner. We've had a third and long, like passing nickel situation, 3-3-5, I think actually is where DJ Turner is in on the field in nickel situations over Mike Hilton. We haven't noticed Mike Hilton enough. The run defense has been poor. That should be his strength. He's a good blitzer. We haven't seen that enough either. The Bengals only blitzed 10 times last night, just sitting back, letting the Commanders' offense dictate to their defense. They got to stop doing that. That's a lot of negatives, but is there hope there? Sure. These young guys can play better. Cam Taylor-Britt can play better. Dax Hill, DJ Turner can play better, make a positive impact. Jordan Battle can get reinserted and play better. You could find a role for ADG over Jermaine Pratt. So there is some hope there that the back half can be better.
And it carries into this one from Sean. Is Josh Newton and DJ Turner ready to be starters?
No, I don't know that Josh Newton is. And the way they used him, throughout the offseason, more in the slot and then backup boundary guy. I don't know that he is ready for that. Even in preseason, he took his lumps as a rookie, and you typically do at corner. We saw that with DJ Turner last year. He had some really good games, then he really got picked on at the end of the year. I would like to see Turner in year 2. I still want to see what his upside is. You're going to have to make a decision, not just on all of these guys. Like, what are you going to do at corner? Because right now, they're all signed for next year other than Mike Hilton. You got to figure out who that future slot is. Is that Josh Newton? Is it DJ Turner? Is it Dax Hill? I'd like to see more mixing them around and figuring out what it is. Now, they probably still believe they got their best guys out there and they're still competing for the season, and they have to. They got to get back and right the ship. But if you get to the point where this season is a lost cause, I hope we see a lot of these guys play, and I hope we do see even Newton play, because you got to know what you have at those positions, because it's a critical position going forward.
Joe, talking more about how loud was the suite last night with Gary Owen in there?
Gary Owen's awesome. I think he's actually hilarious. And then we had the mailman from Instagram, the rawr. It was a good time. And Gary and he creates a good atmosphere. So when we're in there and everything's going on, and even on the bad plays, he's cracking jokes. So you're like, yeah, they just gave up a touchdown, but that's pretty good.
Gavin says, I'm upset with the arrogance of the front office. They are too confident that they can draft to replace our star players like Bates, Reeder, and T. Will they ever change?
I don't hate the draft and replace theory if you're drafting well. If you're one of the better drafting teams, this is a good plan, and it's a necessary plan. Once you pay Joe Burrow and the Stars, you have to draft well in order to sustain that roster, to sustain a high level offensive line, because you can't pay everyone. Like, we're getting to that soon also. I know we've looked at Mims and maybe Matt Lee it could be a potential starter, but in another year, they're going to be losing guys like potentially maybe Cordell Volson if they want to extend him or not. We'll see how well he plays the rest of the year, but you're going to lose Alex Kappa. You're going to lose Ted Karras in 2 years. They're going to have to replace these guys. We'll see how long Orlando Brown, if it goes all 4 years or not, or plus. But on the defensive line, we're already seeing it, where it's like, yeah, we can't pay Larry Ogunjobi. We can't pay DJ Reeder in the secondary with Jesse Bates. So you have to draft to replace these guys, but that works. You need 2 things for that to work. Number one, you need to draft well, and I would say they haven't to replace those guys. That's clear. That's been a theme of our conversation today. Number 2, when you do draft well and when you do hit on one of these guys, you need to keep them. You cannot allow Jesse Bates and T. Higgins to walk because of a difference of dealing with an agent, number one, same agent, but number two, in structure of guaranteed money. Like, in my opinion, that's pretty crazy to say, all right, we hit these guys. And I know we've made a lot of excuses like, oh, you know what? They just don't value the safety position. No, they offered Bates $16 million per year. They just didn't offer him the guaranteed money. And then T. Higgins, if they're offering him 20 to 25 million and that's what he gets in free agency, that's fine. That's a comparable offer. But are they offering him the guaranteed money he's going to get in free agency? No. So I don't look at it so much when it comes time to extend. People look at it sometimes and say, well, it's hard to pay a safety. It's hard to pay a guard. It's hard to pay two receivers. These are valid arguments for team building. But at the same time, you also have to play what you have. You also have to pay what you have. You don't always plan to, if you draft a linebacker in the third round and he ends up being great, you just let him go because he's a linebacker? No, you pay him because now you've drafted a great player and we'll fill the other positions. If you accept that we're not going to pay this guy, whether it's Kevin Zeitler at guard because he's a guard, and we'll just fill in that spot and figure it out. You've never filled that spot. You've never been able to recover from that. And it's a position where you don't value it or can't draft well enough at it. You pay these guys and you fill in the draft elsewhere. You figure it out afterwards. You don't do it. I feel like they do it the opposite. We'll draft these guys, then we'll let them go. Oh, no, they can't play. Well, it's too late now to do anything about it as people are looking for answers in season. What can the Bengals do in season? Not much. These things happen in the off season, and the Bengals have already made this bed, and now they're laying in it.
All right, Joe, we got to talk. Remind everybody, hashtag Bengals on the brain.
Yep.
Dave Lapham, Joe Goodberry, bobbleheads come as a set.
Very exclusive.
Maybe we throw in some bucket hats. I saw some in the storage room.
Yeah, we've got a lot of first star goodies to give away here, especially if you're a fan of Bengals on the Brain and Dave Lapham in the trenches, which his bobblehead looks. That's a nice. I wanted a uniform on. Anyways, I never played, so I can't. But yes, Bengals on the Brain. Hashtag Bengals on the Brain. We've got stuff to give away, so you might as well join in on it and get ready, and we'll do that at the end of the show. We got more questions here, Dave? Or
we do.
All right.
I know you break down this team, the whole team, not just one player, not
right.
just one area, the whole team every year. So James says, wouldn't you say this is the most talented team under Taylor with better depth, at least on paper?
I would not. And I was saying this leading up to the start of the season. I actually had major concerns with a lot of the talent. I think we get, hyped up in the offseason a little bit and say, yeah, this guy's going to be good, or they drafted this guy and that guy. But I grade these guys before the draft, before they're even Bengals players. So there's times where I'm looking at it and they draft these guys and I go, yeah, that's not going to work, or I'm not going to. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just going to stick to that. I can be convinced otherwise. But when it happens on draft day and I'm not so high on the upside of Jordan Battle, or I'm not so high on the upside of DJ Turner, or whatever it may be, and these are just arbitrary examples. I'm not saying I felt that way at the time. I'm just, saying I look at the roster maybe a little bit differently. And I say, well, they buried Jordan Battle on this depth chart. Maybe they don't like him as much as we thought. Maybe they don't like him as much as his rookie season flashed. And then you watch the tape and you're like, yeah, he was okay, but he still looked slow. He still looked hesitant at times. He wasn't great in deep coverage. And Von Bell he is taking all the snaps. So maybe the depth at safety isn't good. Maybe the depth at corner isn't good because they're starting a converted safety at corner instead of, DJ Turner or whoever you've drafted recently. Maybe the depth on the D-line. So if you're excited for Chris Jenkins or McKinley Jackson, I said it on draft night on the First Star Draft show. I'm like, yeah, neither of those guys got me excited. I liked parts of what they did on tape, but did I think they were going to be impact players, or do I think they're going to be rookie impact players? Definitely not. First of all, defensive tackle is a position that typically takes a year or two before you see these guys hit their upside. So to think like, yeah, it's going to be talented enough, I did not see that. I've had reservations about Myles Murphy being a high-end pass rusher. I think he'll be a good player, but do I think he'll be an impact player? I'm not sure. Other than Trey Hendrickson, I'm not sure they have a stud even coming up and, through the ranks that they've drafted. And they've spent a lot of draft picks at that position. I don't think Chris Jenkins is ever going to be a Pro Bowler. I don't think Myles Murphy is ever going to be a Pro Bowler. So I look at it a little bit differently, and that may be the negative side of things, but I don't. So when I, beginning of the season, I said, this defensive tackle room might be the worst in the league. The running game still don't have a high-end running back talent. Now they proved me wrong there. So that's an example. I think the running game has looked really good. And I think the more they use Chase Brown, the better. But also when T. Higgins was down for the first 2 weeks and we weren't sure if Jamar Chase was going to play, I tweeted out, not sure this receiver room is good enough. Like, this is bottom tier receiver room without those two. And we saw them struggle in the first 2 weeks to really create explosives and rely on these guys in key situations. Gesicki had drops. Tanner Hudson had that fumble. Andre Iosivas had drops. Like those, Trenton Irwin clearly got benched. Then last night, Jermaine Burton's active over him. So I may have been a little bit more on the negative side of the depth and talent overall. But I think last night was a good example of it. The defense does not have enough talent. Poor game plan by Lou Anarumo, clearly. But I do not believe they have enough talent to compete at a high level on that side of the ball.
Bengals for Life says these coaches don't know how to utilize the talent they have. Having Von Bell out there instead of Jordan Battle is a goddamn shame.
It is. That's fair to say. Go ahead and say it. It is a goddamn shame. Because, number one, you drafted Jordan Battle. So in successful organizations, one other key that you need is a unified vision from the top down. And that starts with like the personnel department, scouting these guys and drafting these guys and talking with the coaching staff. This is what this guy can do. This is what he can't do. Dex Hill fits in this conversation. He was a nickel slot corner, box defender at Michigan, at most a strong safety, Tyrann Mathieu type. And the Bengals next year, oh, you're a free safety, go replace Jesse Bates without veteran help next to you because Nick Scott was a disaster. Here, go do that. Oh, it didn't work. Surprise. Well, the personnel department and the scouting staff should have warned the defensive staff that this is what he did in college. If you're not going to use him this way, you better develop him and figure out a way to use him the way you guys view that. And then now we have, looked like the coaching staff wasn't happy with Jordan Battle last year and Dax Hill. They essentially replaced both at safety. And while the personnel department's like, hey, we drafted this guy in the third round. We drafted a safety in the first and third round. And those guys, number one, the one safety got moved, but the other one is not playing and not even having a role. I bet the personnel department's saying, where is that guy? And what's the issue? What's the disconnect here that you can't use that guy correctly? Because we're giving you, in their opinion, the personnel department's opinion, because they don't ever think they're wrong. They think they scouted correctly every time until, blatantly obvious that they did not. They'll look at the coaching staff and they'll say, hey, use these guys, figure out how to use them. I don't care if you don't think he fits this one little role that you have for him. Figure out what he does well, because we thought he did this well. You guys should use him that way. I agree. I bet if you're a personnel-minded person and not a coaching-minded person, you may be thinking the same thing, that they are not using these guys correctly.
Dr. Yodel, I just want to know what's going on. Like, it's not even the performance talent-wise. Everyone just feels unmotivated.
Yeah, Doc, you got the symptoms pretty correct here, and we started the show with that. It's felt like a systemic thing, a top-down organizational dysfunction. There were reports and rumors of that throughout the offseason that the vibes weren't correct. I'm going to keep quoting that, and I think that was who's the guy from ESPN that said that? I can't remember now. What was it? No, it wasn't Ben Baby, not a Bengals reporter. I think it was a national guy, and I can't remember who it was now. He's retired now, or he does other things. Anyways, I use that because I thought it was interesting at the time. We couldn't really say it wasn't true, right? We had a bunch of questions about contract guys, holding out, and two players that wanted to be traded that are key cornerstone players. Two of your top five guys requested publicly trades, Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins. Yeah, the vibes weren't correct, and how that affects from the top down when you don't commit to these players or give them that financial security and stability to be able to play a very violent sport and put your body on the line and put your career on the line. It's tough to get everyone to buy in. I think part of getting people to buy in and believe they're in a Super Bowl window and they will sacrifice their body to do what it takes to win is feeling that the organization will take care of you. And I think we're lacking that right now.
Steve says if we go 0-4, sadly, there will not be changes.
I don't know that that's true. It's probably uncharted territory for this team because we feel like they can compete and make a run in the AFC Championship. So I don't want to get that twisted. Well, I thought there was talent deficiencies on the roster, clearly. I mean, every team does. Even the team that wins the Super Bowl at the end of the year will have issues and holes on their roster. So don't completely think I thought this roster sucked. I think you've got a quarterback that is a franchise quarterback that can play at an extremely high level, at an elite level. You've got the weapons if you can get them happy and make sure they're happy. Jamar looked pretty happy last night, scoring twice. So maybe you can fix that. I do think they brought in the right weapons and they're mixing up the offense enough. So there are reasons why they could have overcome some of their deficiencies to be really, really good and make a run for it. But if they go 0-4, what would be the type of changes we'd want to see? Would it be who could you bench? Would it be just benching Von Bell and starting Jordan Battle? Is that enough? Would it be enough to bench Dax Hill and start DJ Turner. Like those aren't sweeping changes. Or unless you're saying they should fire Lou Anarumo, who just put out a great performance against the Chiefs, or fire Zach Taylor for that. I mean, again, we talked about this. It would have to be a total meltdown of epic proportions, to which we have seen before, and they still didn't fire Marvin Lewis at those times. The leash is much longer for Zach Taylor than we want to believe.
Rob says, can we talk about the run in the red zone, specifically 2nd and goal from the 14-yard line to Zach Moss? We are just limiting our chances to score touchdowns with those wasted plays.
Yeah, 2nd and long runs are maybe the worst play calls in the NFL. And the Bengals don't do it very often. I know we highlight it every time because I'm a big stickler for that. They did that early in the Zach Taylor era. I remember specific example, I want to say it was 2021, and they were about 6 weeks in, and they were top 3 at 2nd and long runs, and the offense wasn't finding its footing. And I was tweeting about it. And at the time, Brian Callahan reached out and said, you know what? This is something we plan on fixing. And at the end of the year, they were one of the best teams for running at least in 2nd and long situations, and they still are. So that was something they correct at the time, and it's something they're aware of. When you guys call this stuff out, when the data gets presented, they see it. We're talking about a young staff for the most part. They are online too. They see these things. So they are trying to correct it as well. But 2nd and 14, and I thought I want to watch that tape because I don't know if Burrow checked into it. You got to remember, he has multiple plays in the huddle to say, all right, there's only 6 guys in the box here, only 5 guys, whatever it may be on that play. Let's check to a run here and see if we can get them, see if we can trick them and get it up. And now I'd rather that be Chase Brown in there because I feel like a little bit more explosion. Maybe he could break it and split those safeties or get past that linebacker and make it into the end zone. But a 2nd and long run is bad, just generally. But if he checked into it at the line and thought they could sneak something and get him in a favorable 3rd down situation, I hate it, but I can at least understand what the idea was there. But I'm with you. The red zone altogether needs to be better. We're expecting perfection if the defense is going to be this bad, and they weren't perfect. They had a couple miscues in the red zone that probably cost them.
Kind of a couple here to go together. Tanner says, is Sam Hubbard almost unplayable? Bengal for Life followed it up, says we need to get Miles Murphy back in action and get Hubbard out of there. We have KJ Henry as well, and he is a hell of a player.
KJ Henry's on the practice squad. They did release him and bring him back. They played Colin Johnson, I want to say 6th round pick last year at that spot. Do I think Sam Hubbard's unplayable? I don't think that. I think he's unstartable, which is a major difference, right? He was still, last night, he still had a couple run defense plays where he's taking that pulling guard or taking that tight end coming across and absolutely demolishing him and giving his body up. He has sacrificed. He's always done this. He's always been a try-hard, tough dude that was willing to give up his body. It's why he's wearing a giant brace on his arm and why he's been banged up so many times, because he will take those guys out and allow the rest of the defense to make a play. But it's a passing league, it's a pass rush league, and it's an impact play league. You need splash plays on offense. You need splash plays on defense. That's how you win games. When you can't create them, when you're not creating chaos, when you're not pushing the pocket or getting around the corner as a pass rusher, I have no use for you. I need someone with more explosion. I need someone with more bend. I need someone that could rip off that line and force that quarterback to slide maybe a little bit left and help Trey Hendrickson out. I need guys inside. We were watching a couple plays as we were recapping the game before, and actually Joseph Ossai had 2 wins around the corner, and no one else did a thing, and the quarterback stood right in the middle of the pocket. That pocket's got to be pushed in a little bit for that edge guy to get a little help there. So I need Murphy back as fast as possible. He'll be eligible to return week 5. I'm with you guys. He needs to be inserted as a starter as soon as he's capable, if he's capable health-wise, which I think he's supposed to be. And if he is, he's your starter. You bring Hubbard in for run defense and, give him a breather here or there. Murphy's supposed to be a good run defender as well, but I wouldn't be surprised because Hubbard had more snaps than Hendrickson last night. Hendrickson was getting his butt kicked and was walking off the field pretty consistently. He can't be the hero every time. I wouldn't be surprised if Miles Murphy starts leading the defensive end room in snaps per game once he's eligible and healthy.
All right, the Fool's trying to start a different hashtag here, Joe. He has the hashtag fire Zach Taylor. That's not the hashtag today, folks. It's hashtag Bengals on the brain. We're getting down to those final minutes for you to get a chance to maybe take a couple bobbleheads from us, maybe some bucket hats.
Yeah, we've got some stuff to give away.
So, all right. How about this one? At least can we take on edge rushers with the number 1 overall pick next year?
They are scheduled to pick top 3 as of right now. The Titans, Jags, Bengals, all 0-3. Yeah, that would be a position. So say you do, and we're not there yet, but let's entertain the idea and the conversation because I love the draft. If you do end up top 5, top 10, yes, you're looking at trench players, difference makers, defensive tackle, defensive end, offensive tackle, maybe playing McGuard for 2 years or so, whatever it may be. Yes, that's what you're looking for. Ideally, you're not looking for a wide receiver. I mean, Travis Hunter would be fun. We talked about that a little bit today too. Maybe you play him at corner. Maybe you draft a corner in the top 10. Maybe that's what it is. But yes, trenches are typically where you go. So if you're asking defensive end already, and that might be tongue in cheek because I don't think you guys are ready to talk draft. We don't want to do that and lose our minds completely. We're only on the verge of losing our minds. Yeah, we're talking defensive line.
Joe Wood says, what do you think about 2 weeks in a row linemen catching wide open touchdown passes?
So this has not happened since 2018 to the Zach Taylor Rams. And Zach Taylor wasn't the head coach there, but I'm pinning it on him because this is unacceptable. How does that happen? First of all, that should happen once. I said this on the live stream last night. This happened probably once every 5 years to a team. And I don't even think it's that frequent. Back-to-back weeks, that means the Commanders saw you guys have a miscommunication issue with the Chiefs and said, let's see if they'll do that again. We'll try that this week. And then they did. You didn't fix the communication. I thought we said we're going to get a little slower, maybe worse than run defense at safety because Geno Stone's never been a good run defender. He's always missed a lot of tackles, but he's better in coverage and a little bit slower than what you had last year at safety. We're going to get a little bit talent. We're going to bring talent down at safety. But we're going to bring communication up, and the entire defense is going to be better for it. So far, that's not true. Has not happened. Can't have communication issues like that. All that is saying, I got this guy. I got this guy. And we got to defend the run, but also keep one eye on that guy in case he goes out. Inexcusable.
We'll go back to Ninja Smoke Bomb. He says, is Geno Stone quality? I'm not sure yet.
So Geno Stone is, I think, quality. And so the question is he better than quality, right? Is he an impact player? Is he good? Because if you had 11 quality players, you probably don't have a very good defense. You do need impact players. You do need players to make splash plays, which is what he lived on last year, which is why he got the big contract. You need to see him get his hands on a ball, and he almost did week 1. So maybe we'd feel a little bit differently if he intercepts that pass week 1 that he can't come down with in the end zone. And that may have switched the game up a little bit too because the Patriots ended up scoring on that drive. So maybe we'd feel differently there. But yeah, we're waiting for that impact play out of Geno Stone because that's what he's drafted, or that's what he was signed for.
I think someone's trolling you here. Maybe your brother in disguise here.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Is it possible for a Bengals fan to become a Bills fan?
Is it possible? Listen, as a lifelong Bengals fan that lives in Buffalo, obviously, I saw someone recently tweet that the Bills are actually America's team. They're just fun and easy to root for. And I don't have any disagreements. It's tough to root for the Bengals right now. It's a little frustrating to root for them right now. I've seen people suggest the Lions if you need another team to watch and have fun with this season. If things we're not there yet. We're not off the bridge yet. We're just standing on the edge of it. All right, guys, relax. We still love the Bengals, but man, we're going to watch some other teams, and it's okay to watch other teams and see how they operate, see how they lose their weapons, right? Trade away Stephon Diggs, see how they still have a very good offense without a number 1 wide receiver. It's fair to look at it and say, you know what? We can take some things from these other teams. Watch other teams. It makes you feel better sometimes, but also makes you feel worse about the Bengals.
Jim wants to know, did Burton or Charlie Jones see the field last night?
They did. Jermaine Burton had a couple snaps, and he went deep on one of them and then walked right off the field like it was a design. This is our shot play situation, and we're going to have Burton running it. And then as soon as the play was over, he didn't even look like back inside. He turned and went to the sideline knowing that, I didn't get the look we wanted, and we didn't get it. So I've got to watch film on that still to see if he was open, if Burrow checked it down. We ended up having a positive play on it, so it wasn't all lost. And then Charlie Jones was mixed in a little bit, and he actually had a nice block. If you remember the Chase Brown run that goes outside where he kind of gets caught up in the middle, bounces it, and then uses his speed to pick up 10 or 11, whatever it was. Charlie Jones was the blocking player there. But as the primary punt return man, he didn't get any chances to do that, which is sad, even though he's been a little inconsistent there.
Papa Bengal says, do you believe it would be a moral boost for the team to pay Chase? And if so, do you think Zach or Joe could convince Katie or Mike?
I have thought about both sides of this. So both sides of the Bengals brain. Number one, would it help to commit to your players and start giving out these guaranteed contracts? Yes. I think that would go a long way in creating the right atmosphere and restoring the vibes a little bit, that we will take care of you guys the same way other organizations will. We don't make you move to another city and uproot your family in order to get the financial security you're craving. But at the same time, if they do it for Jamar Chase, and then because they did this for Joe Burrow, right? They gave more than 1 year of guaranteed money to Joe Burrow. And we thought when they did that, great, here we go. They're going to do it for Jamar Chase because they're going to have to. Well, they didn't, and they haven't yet. And that was the issue of why it broke down, right? Based on all reports. So if now you do it for Burrow, and you don't do it for everyone else, you don't think that creates a little bit of animosity? Now, if you do it for Burrow and Chase, and say to Higgins, and say to Trey Hendrickson, and Jesse Bates, and DJ Reader, we're not going to do it for you guys. You're just a tier, you're just a cut below these guys here. I don't think that helps. So I think it has to be a complete change of how you're doing contracts and doing it fairly. And yeah, you got to draw a line somewhere. Every organization does. But I think they're drawing that line very sharp to the top of the roster. And that's a dangerous game to play.
All right. Robert says CTB has to stop talking trash too. Even if he can back it up at times, it doesn't help, especially now.
It doesn't help. And it's funny because trash talk can be a motivator at times for yourself. It can be a motivator for your teammates. It can try and get them on the same page and get them right for where you need to be. It can sometimes just put a little pressure on the other team and the opponent. Remember, Chad Johnson used to do that. He would say that to the corners. And I think it put pressure on them to perform and shut Chad up. And largely it didn't work. But Chad was borderline Hall of Famer, Ring of Honor guy for the Bengals. So he could back it up much easier than it seems Cam Taylor-Britt has been able to do. So I'm with you. I think when you're 0-3, and I think Taylor mentioned this last night, says, let's be positive about our teammates. Let's talk up our teammates. Let's talk up the opponent. There's nothing wrong in doing that. We don't need to talk when we're 0-3. I think that we will see a different mindset. And maybe that helps. Maybe, I'm sure people are getting chewed out today in the meetings, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was a topic.
Luke says it's time to rebuild after a peak in the Palmer Dalton era. It never was the same. We've peaked in the Burrow era. Time to start over.
You're always starting over, but you are bringing up fair points. They did peak in the Palmer and Dalton eras and couldn't figure it out. I brought this up earlier. Once they paid their stars on both of those iterations of the team, they were unable to compete afterwards until they did a complete teardown. We are hoping that Burrow is special enough that it doesn't require a complete teardown, that you can draft well enough, that you can sign well enough, because, well, two things. They have had good draft classes mixed in there, and they've had value free agent signings that made us think, maybe they are different. Maybe they are better at scouting than they were in previous years and with previous generations with this team. They need to luck into that because there's luck involved with either of those two things. They need to luck into that again, and they could be right back knocking on the door of the AFC Championship and potential Super Bowl. So I don't know if it's complete teardown, but it is let's make moves to decrease the luck and increase the skill when it comes to player acquisition and finding talent, please.
All right, final reminder, hashtag Bengals on the brain, chance to win some bobbleheads, maybe some bucket hats be thrown in those packages as well.
They got me taller than Bert, or than Dave Lapham. Sorry, Bert.
That's
that's true, right? Very accurate. I'm taller than Dave.
You tell him that.
Yeah.
When he walks in here in a few minutes.
We had to adjust the camera because they were like, you're not as big as Lap. So we're going to bring the camera in closer. I'm like, come on.
All right. Gatekeeper says, Joe, speaking of, what are your thoughts on Battle and why is he an outcast?
I think they had to create a scapegoat last year, and they used the safety room as it for the defense. They said, listen, we're not getting communication. We're not getting good play. And we thought this, listen, go back to some tweets in Bengals on the Brain episodes last year when Battle wasn't playing over Nick Scott. And we were going, what is going on? Nick Scott's terrible. How is Battle not playing? Then Battle was inserted. And if you use PFF grades, I thought he played, very, very well. But there was times on tape where I'm like, he's a little hesitant. He doesn't look fast. You can't miss tackles if you are a box run defender. And he was a very good tackler and run defender last year, but the entire team was missing tackles and allowing explosives. So I think they kind of bunched the safety room together and said, let's tear it up. bring in Geno Stone, bring in Von Bell. And what would they have done if Von Bell wasn't released, right? That's what I'm kind of wondering what their plan was there. Would they have kept Dax at corner or at safety? Would they have just played Jordan Battle? It clearly seems like they don't think Battle played as well as we thought last year, and that they don't think he's as good as we think. I mean, that's clear, or else you would be playing him, and maybe that changes soon. It's only 3 weeks in, and maybe they're like, there's self-scouting that happens pretty routinely, especially it takes sometimes about a month to see these big changes in the NFL level. Maybe we start seeing Battle split in there a little bit more, and that would be a welcomed self-correction by the team.
Joe, we've been on for over an hour and 5 minutes.
Woo.
I think it's time to give away some stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty.
And you may have to read them to me if they're a little, or you just read them, Dave, if they're a little short there for me.
We'll do that.
All right. Oh no, that's a big view for us. All right, let's see it. We're gonna give you a couple sets of bobbleheads here. Dave Lapham, Joe Goodberry. We also got some first star hats, some Bengals on the Brain hats.
Gatekeepers
with a lock, unlocked. Gatekeepers unlocked. First winner. We're doing 3 sets, right?
Did Gatekeepers win last night during the show?
He may have. This dude, we're gonna have to figure that out.
We'll figure something else.
Yeah, we might have to send him something else then if that's the case. Haley Estes. You're getting the next set of bobbleheads. Congrats, Haley. And one last set to give out. Thank you for watching this live Bengals on the Brain. I thought it was actually really good. That was a fast hour. Shafi, am I saying that right? Congratulations. You've got the last set here. And look for a comment below, and we'll tell you how to reach out, and we'll coordinate and get these bobbleheads sent out to you guys. First Star is great at that stuff, and they cover all the shipping and all that. Dave?
Any final words you have? I mean, we only get you a short time here. Yeah. You know, when you come in and visit, and I know you have a great time when you're here.
No doubt. Hey, you guys take care of me so well, especially First Star. You know, it's a great partner. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with you guys. It stinks that we've got a situation, but you know what it did? It created a very spirited chat. It created a very energetic and maybe the wrong type of energy. Maybe sometimes that's what it requires. But, you know, yeah, I wish I was here more often. I wish I could take advantage of this beautiful studio and all the luxuries and the amenities that I'm provided by First Star. So,
let's talk about a couple things. Let's talk about Bengals on the Brain. You can see it usually on Tuesdays. That's why we're doing this live stream, because you're going to be on a flight tonight when normally your show would come out.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Fridays. And then the post-game show, the Jake and Joe Bengals post-game show presented by First Star Logistics,
that's right,
has been very successful despite the 0-3 start.
Yeah, I think it'd be even more plentiful if they would get a win here and look good on all phases of the game. But the Jake and Joe post-game show is awesome. It's a nice throwback. Jake Lisco and I getting back together and doing a show. First Star was able to make that happen, which is awesome. And I think a lot of throwback fans that have been following us for a long time are excited to see that and get us and hear our thoughts immediately after the game, following every game, where we give stuff away. We've given away some crazy stuff. This week's a Yeti cooler. We got an Xbox coming up, two Xboxes. Yeah, the 2 of them.
And more than just the Yeti cooler, it's a tailgate package with a couple drinking accessories for whatever your adult beverage may be.
Very nice, but yeah.
As you said, you wanted to kind of leave here with that Yeti cooler because you can't.
No, my wife looks them up all the time. Hey, we should get one of these. I look at the price. I'm like, yeah, why are you even asking me this? We're not doing that.
But we still have a lot of, think about,
last year,
all the things we gave away a year ago, thanks to First Star Logistics, all the stuff here we are, we're only getting ready for game number 4. We gave away a couple PlayStations,
sneakers.
How many of those Nike Zoom,
3,
Pegasus, Bengals shoes, 4 pairs of those. And then, like you said, we got the Yeti tailgate.
The WWE belt was this week.
Belt last night, which I was afraid Gary Owen was going to walk out with it.
Yeah, he really liked it. I think it's heavy too. It's die
people
cast.
Don't realize.
No, they don't. When you get it, whoever that winner was, I don't remember now. Number Dunn was the first one at the actual when we gave it out during in the suite at halftime. So these are awesome prizes. Last year they had some crazy. I wanted like the golf bag, the arcade. There was a lot of cool stuff that First Star is giving away. So at the very least, you're going to get the analysis. You're going to get the fun, the ability to vent with each other and get on the chat and let loose a little bit together in the post-game show. But also, you get a chance to win some stuff courtesy of First Star Logistics.
Yeah, Arif was the the winner
That's
of
right.
from the post game show last night. So, but Joe, you get to say goodbye.
I can get to say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining a live special edition of Bengals on the Brain. I'm Joe Goodberry from the First Star Studios in Cincinnati. Until next time, who day, I guess.